Next up is to clean out the inside of the Model A. All of the interior has been removed. Part of the roof, top right here has been removed. It's got to be replaced. But there's a lot of rust and dirt that's down on the floorboard and around the body. And so today I'm going to use a sandblaster and I'm going to clean this up. I was going to use a wire wheel, take a lot more time, and there's nooks and crannies that you really can't get into with a wire wheel on the end of a drill. So I went to Harbor Freight and I bought this sandblaster. I think this was 35 or 40 bucks, which was pretty cheap. I bought 4 bags and all the gear. And so what I'm going to do here is I'm going to test it out before I start shooting the car. This is one of the pieces that came off right here by the window. Oh yeah, here we go. Look at that. Doesn't that look good? But that sandblasting certainly cleaned everything up pretty well. I had purchased a Eaton Detroit spring, leaf spring for the front, which I installed, not a problem. I wanted to do the same for the back. They're about $600 or $700. They're not cheap. So I spoke to the owner there at Eaton Detroit and asked him the question, how do you know if it's bad? Maybe I don't need to replace it. And his response was, well, if you have a broken leaf in it, obviously that tells you it needs to be replaced. He said, how did it drive? Did it bounce a lot? I said, I drove it for about 10 minutes when I first got it. I don't remember. And he said, I would not go to the hassle of replacing it. I would just clean it up and grease it up, and it'll probably be good to go. So that's what I'm going to do. Is I'm going to take the, it's a 10 leaf spring. I'm going to take this off. And he said, you really got to be careful because of the tension that's on here. I know that there's a couple of spreaders, leaf spreaders on the market today. The problem is you have this hump here. So it's kind of a specialty device to come over and go underneath each eye, to be able to spread it apart, to be able to take the shackles off. So what I did was I already took the cotter pins and the nuts off of each side of the shackles. And a neighbor of mine suggested, instead of using some kind of a spreader, to put a strap around here, pull it down, and that should take the pressure off enough to be able to take the shackles out, which is what I'm going to do. But one of the things that was interesting when I started the project is the U-bolts. There's 2 of them that go right here to hold the spring in place. There were no cotter pins in it, in all 4 of these. No cotter pins at all. I couldn't even see the little hole in the bolt for the cotter pin. And I thought, oh boy, the front was not the original. Somebody modified it. So maybe somebody did the same thing here. And so when I took it all off and I lowered the spring already once, sure enough, here is basically 3 layers of nylon. It looks like about 2-inch wide strap that somebody had put in here between the bottom of the frame and the top of the spring. So they had put this up here like this, and that is enough right there. That's thick enough. It's like 1/4 of an inch thick. That was thick enough that would cause the brackets down underneath here to clip on, to be able to not be able to put a cotter pin in. So this is not stock. This is not the way these cars came. We're not going to put it back in, of course. And we're going to have this thing properly on here with the nuts and the cotter pin. So what I did here is I've got this tie-down strap. I wrapped it around the rear end, and I put this clamp on here to hold this from sliding that way. And I'm going to ratchet this thing down, and I hope I hope it works. I don't think I'm in danger here. If it does work, if it comes down and compresses, that means the spring's going to go out. I'll be able to knock off that shackle right there, and then this one should be easy on the right hand side. So I've got it on here. Let's see what happens. Hopefully it doesn't explode in my face and hurt me. Well, there you have it. Broke the shackle. That's okay. These are all worn out. They're grooved. It's going to get replaced anyway. But I'm not so sure that that's going to work for putting it back in once the shackles or once the bushings are in place. I think we may be getting the spreader after all. But so at least for right now, I can get the spring out, take it all apart, and sandblast it, paint it, take the grinder to get the burrs off the ends of each one of them, and get ready to put it back in. After I had the leaves sandblasted, I took my grinder and went to each edge on the bottom side to grind down the burrs that had accumulated from years of rubbing back and forth. This is where the upper spring would rub against the lower spring, and this is what it looks like after I ground down that area so that the springs would mesh better. The springs were then painted. After painting, between the springs, I opted not to put grease. Instead, I used black graphite paint. I used a 1/4-inch threaded stock with washers and nuts to assemble the leaves, and then I had to use 2 C-clamps on each side of that center threaded stock to compress it all so that I could tighten the threaded stock before taking it out and putting in the square-headed bolt. I took the hacksaw, cut off the excess amount on the bolt. Then I put on the clamps on each side about halfway down the spring, and leaf assembly was complete and ready for installation. The next step in this process is to get the spring put back up underneath the frame and connected with the shackles to the axle housing. So that's what I'm going to do right now. The rear leaf spring is in. The brackets here holding it on okay. The square nut on that bolt that holds all 10 leaves together is on there, sticking through perfectly, and looks pretty good. Next up on this whole project is putting the shackles on here, which is not going to be a lot of fun, but we've got to get it done. So far, so good. It is time to connect the leaf spring to the rear axle via the shackles. Wanted to point out was relative to spreading this spring. This thing is under so much pressure, this leaf spring right here, it is just amazing. So I went ahead and I bought this spring spreader from Snyder. This thing is a beast. Look at this thing. Look at the size of that thread and that nut. I had to get a adjustable open-end nut. I don't even have a wrench that's that big enough to fit around that nut. But this thing is a monster. It is very, very heavy duty. And when it comes to my life, $100 is justified, right? So anyway, this is what I'm going to do is use this spring spreader. I'm going to go ahead and do it. So keep your eyes open and hopefully nothing will happen to me. There you go. There's the leaf spring is now connected to the axle housing via the shackles. The nuts are on, the cotter pins are in. The nuts are not tight down really, really tight. You got to leave the car so it'll flex, right? Going up and down the road. So these are not super tight. They're snug, but they're not cinched down all the way. I've got to tell you, this thing is worth every penny. I cannot believe how much tension there was spreading out this leaf spring, putting it on here. This thing is worth every dollar, absolutely every dollar. So don't try to Mickey Mouse it on here using some other kind of spreader. Get one of these things and save yourself a lot of grief. Before I put the transmission tower shifter onto the transmission, I wanted to share with you an experience that I had, and hopefully you'll learn something about this. It's relative to putting in the spring and the retainer that keeps the spring on the stick shaft down inside this area right here. It's kind of hard to see it. You really can't see it because I've got the other parts in here. But inside is a spring about so long, and getting it out without a tool was a challenge in itself. But because it was all greasy and everything else, it was just an absolute mess. But getting it back in was even worse. And what I wanted to show you were two different types that are on the market today, two different types of devices to be able to put on here to be able to compress the screen, stick the retainer in, and then release it so that the spring's in place. One of them is this Mickey Mouse piece of crap. I don't even remember where I got this. I'm not even going to mention it where I got, but it came with these ridiculous instructions that looked like a 7th grader wrote up. This thing mounts to the side, it mounts like this with these 3 studs right here, one for the center, and this thing right here, U-bolt, if you will, is supposed to push into the spring to push it down. I tried multiple times over multiple days to getting this thing to work. First of all, having this in the vise is what they're recommending. This stick, the shifter stick itself, is loose. So you've got to hold it up in here while you're pushing down on this compressing device, this thing, trying to get the spring compressed to get the clip in there, the keeper in there to be able to hold it in place, right? I created some new swear words as a result of this tool. I can't repeat them on camera, but they're genius. My new swear words are genius. I haven't used them since. I hope I never do. But these things right here are absolutely worthless. Do not buy this under any circumstances, period. Okay. So the next tool I found was this little goodie. And this has got some hooks on it, I guess, if you will, or whatever you want to call it. And basically, in the vise, you're pushing down on the spring and then going beyond where the keeper goes and then inserting the keeper. It took myself and my wife to do it. It was in the vise. I pushed down and she pushed in the keeper. We did it in less than 5 minutes. This, my friends, is what you want. I don't remember where I got this on. It was one of either Bratton's or I just don't remember which website because I'm on them all. But this thing seemed to work a lot better. It definitely worked better than this first one. So that's my advice to you. If you're looking to replace the spring in your tower, this is the way to go, or something else. But this one, I think this was like $30, whatever. Somewhere around $30. It was worth every penny. Okay? So that's my advice today on putting the shifter spring in place. I have new forks on here from Steve Mitchell Transmission, and his dent kit, which goes right here. This looks really good. Got new shafts. I think the shafts came from Snyder, and we're ready to go. Put it in the car, and hopefully it works. So this is what it looks like after the tower has been installed on the transmission. Here's our neutral. Here's our reverse. First gear, second gear, third gear, and back to neutral. So we're looking pretty good here. Be sure to subscribe to the channel. In the next video, I'm going to be installing a brand new power steering unit. Thanks for watching.